In the last video, we talked about what happens when AI agents go rogue, when they start calling the wrong tools, hallucinate, or just forget what they're supposed to do. Today, we're going to fix that. I will share with you 6 tips how you can build more reliable AI agents so they are more testable, useful, and real-world ready. So if you haven't seen my previous video, I highly recommend checking it out first. We covered common issues like context rot, overloading agents with tools, hallucinations, and what happens after multiple times you interact with an AI agent. Now, this video is all about solutions, some of the patterns that you shouldn't do in production because we notice a drop in performance, and some of the tips that actually helped us build more reliable AI agents in production. So if you find this valuable and would like to learn more how to build AI agents in production, make sure to join my cohort. We are starting one on the 3rd of November. The link is in the description. See you there. So let's start with the simple tips in the beginning. I see posts like this all over social media, also sometimes on YouTube. You can see like posts like this agent does everything. And you can see from the post that they connected the agent to like 1,000 different tools. I have to say I'm also sometimes also guilty of following such patterns. And what I would really recommend you doing is not to do that, for the reason that AI agents have a very limited number of capacity. Think of it as similar to any human. They can only do very certain actions. And once this capacity has been reached by maybe interacting with it multiple times and also asking it to keep a record of the different conversations it had with me and still asking it to connect to all these different tools, you can just notice that at some point it's going to stop calling the tools correctly. But sometimes you also notice that the AI agent just stopped using any tools. It just continued to answer the users without even talking to any of these tool sets. So here, my tip would be, if you're building AI agents in production, make sure to maybe add a top 3 tools per agent. Maybe something that has read writes. If you need it to write something, then maybe. But also wouldn't encourage you to add an AI agent that is connected to your database for many different risk reasons. But if you want to maybe read up something from a database and tell the user about certain things or do some analysis, then yeah, that's fine. But we noticed that maybe 3 is the absolute maximum that an AI agent can respond and still be to some sort reliable enough to be used in production. That means handling thousands of requests without just going crazy. What I also sometimes don't like about using software like this, for example, initn. I'm a big fan of initn, but some of the limitations are if an AI agent doesn't call a tool and it should call a tool, it doesn't necessarily mean there's an error. So that means you don't get flagged as an error. That's only something you see after you really analyze the production data and you're logging everything that is happening. Compared to software development, if you were supposed to call an API and an API was not called, this is technically should be an error, and it usually also doesn't happen. Like if a step means you need to go right, and by going right means you need to call the specific API, it will always be called. But with the AI agents, they decide if they want to call this tool, if they want to use something, they want to use the calendar, they want to use that. And if they don't decide it, it doesn't get flagged as an error. So that's something that really bothers me by building AI agents in general. But we noticed that, yeah, if you want to stay more reliable, try to use at max 3 different tools. Now, the second tip I would also like to share is that sometimes you don't need an AI agent. Sounds shocking. Everybody online wants to learn how to build these kind of AI agents that's connected to your YouTube channel and do all these kind of cool tool sets. But sometimes the client or the business only needs a very specified steps of actions. And maybe here towards the end, you need maybe an LLM. If you need to generate something like a maybe title description, let's say we're talking about YouTube. So technically, you really don't need a channel manager. I know you like the idea of replacing a human by adding this small node. And then you say, hey, I don't need a channel manager anymore, or I don't need a social media manager. I have now this AI agent. It doesn't work all of the time reliably in a way that you want it to work. And if you have a very defined process that you know, hey, this is how I publish a new video. I do here this kind of step. I get my latest video. I get the video, maybe do some small addition, and I want to add it to a database. Maybe that's all what you need. You don't need to go crazy, and you don't need to be discouraged. It's like, oh, this is boring, just a normal automation, because this could be tremendous value. And by the way, I got this from Nadia. She has also a YouTube channel called AI Insiders. Would recommend you to check her posts. She posted this on LinkedIn in, and I think it's brilliant, and it is something that we use in production all the time. So I wanted to highlight this also in this video. So my second advice would be use automations over agent when possible. And the main reason is automations are deterministic. You know exactly what's going to happen. You will get an error when something doesn't happen, and it's way better than just relying on an agent to do everything. Agents are amazing, but try to take away a little bit of their work if you know how the process works. If you don't have a clear process and you really want some creativity involved, then make sure to add an agent. They can figure it out, hopefully, at some point. So my third tip for building reliable AI agents in production is to definitely add evaluation steps. This is probably one of the most important things you should do while building these systems. So this step happens during the building, not afterwards. And the main idea is like you have a sample data set that you give it the exact labels. Like let's say you get all the reviews from your products, and then you manually label whether a review is negative, is positive, is neutral, and you gather maybe 100, 200 samples that you then put through this AI agent. And then the AI agent's responsibility, let's say you're building a sentiment analysis system, the AI should be able to say this is a positive, negative, and then set the outputs. And then you compare these outputs together. And then you see what is the percentage of times that the AI made it wrong. This is super important. We used to do this in machine learning, and now the same would happen also for building AI agents. The principles didn't actually go away, but I see very few people actually do this step. They try to jump, or they try to skip it because it is a lot of work sometimes. If you need to maybe manually label some data, sometimes you don't have this data. It gets also challenging if you're doing something that is like an interaction. So a chatbot, there is no label for a good answer, right? So that's why n8n provides also a LLM judge. So you can give an input question and then give something that you think the AI should answer, especially if you have some data that the AI should answer from this data. And then you have an LLM judge telling you whether this answer is kind of correct or is not so correct. It gives you a score from 1 to 5 about how correct these two sentences are. So I would definitely use that. Also, will be super helpful if you're experimenting with different models, because you need a way to quantify whether GPT 4.0 is better than GPT 4.0 mini or Claude or another model. What I love about these frameworks is that you can design this one time, and then you can swap in these kind of different variables and see which one is giving you the highest accuracy. And then you can optimize for cost. If they all perform equally good, try to find the cheapest model. And this is how this testing works. So the fourth tip that I would really recommend you if you're building AI agents is to add human in the loop. This comes in different shapes and forms. I love using Airtable in some of the automations that I do for my clients. And it is as simple as, let's say you want to send like a email to maybe leads that you have or customers that you have in your database. And you don't want to just blast an AI generated email to them without actually, at least after the initial rollout of the AI, you want to have some control of the results, because it can harm your brand. If your customer gets an AI generated message that looks super fake, they will be maybe upset. So I usually recommend always to add some sort of system that requires some human approval. And once you really fine tune the result and you're 100% sure of the AI and it's generating amazing emails and stuff that looks human actually wrote that, you can maybe remove that and just start blasting these emails using the AI without worrying about it. But at least in the first initial phase of the testing, always keep some sort of an approval. In Airtable, I like to add this flag, so you can use a checkmark feature, and then you can have an automation that goes also in the background. All the emails that get checked, they get sent. And the nice thing about Airtable also, you can also adjust the stuff here. So it also provides you a way to manually adjust the final result. Usually, if the result needed to be corrected, I also ask for feedback. So I see why something didn't work. So this also works to refine the AI answers and maybe train different model, change the prompting of the AI, or whatever decisions we need to do to make the AI more accurate. If you're not familiar with Airtable, Airtable is like this database that is also quite visual. I really like to enroll this tool for teams that appreciate simplicity and maybe they don't have a lot of technical background. So this makes it a very nice and easy way to interact with AI systems in the back. So the fifth tip that I hope you are already doing. Whenever you roll a new model into production, you need to make sure that you're logging all the answers. So for example, let's say I have this AI chatbot that is answering some things for me. I need to, of course, log all the conversation. So what the user asked, what the AI answered, and then track the sentiment, track whether the issue was resolved, whether the conversation flow was broken. You can here define your criteria and then have some evaluation running in the background. And this would give you the sanity, how well is your AI system is performing. And you don't have to do these manually. So here, actually, sometimes for this use case, I have an AI agent doing this evaluation. And funny enough, there is still some manual work needed. I need to evaluate whether the evaluator is actually working well, because sometimes it says the conversation is broken, but here it was not broken. It was just that the user stopped answering, for example, or something that I don't see as an issue. It was classified as an issue by the AI. So a false positive, for example. Is it false positive or false negative? I think it's a false positive. So it's something that shouldn't have been flagged as an error, but it was flagged as an error. And this would be now the manual work, but it's something that you do once. You invest in the work for one time, and then you know that your evaluator is actually really good, and then you can evaluate your system constantly. So this is, of course, in any software development, this is a no-brainer, but the same thing has to go with AI systems. I see some people skipping this part as well sometimes. They just want to put an AI agent and just roll it out without investing in the infrastructure, the evaluation. I also get some reports, send it to the user to see, or to the client to see what kind of stuff are we having. So to this point, I want to say that I am a huge fan of multi-agent system. So rather than having one AI agent, if you look at here, so one AI agent connected to all these different tools that is trying to answer multiple things. So usually what people do is like this AI agent has to answer all the inquiries and then forward and do like multiple of different tasks. I saw that to have a more accurate system, you would need one orchestrator agent that is sole purpose is just to forward the requests to the people that are needed, or like the AI agents that can handle these things. And here, of course, you would need maybe some memory, and that's already having a memory in an AI agent really limits the number of stuff that you can use with AI agent because of the context swap problem that I explained in the previous video. Once you have many different interactions, you can see from the conversation and the responses, all of a sudden the AI have like a massive text that is absorbing. And I know some people say, but yeah, the input context is massive, so it can understand all of this. And the latest study said that it does not. Its performance just drops. So it doesn't pay attention to everything you give it. And so you really need to be aware with the information that you're providing your agent. And the best way to make sure that no one agent is having such a massive inflow of information is to divide the tasks by multiple people or multiple agents in this case. So I became a big fan of having like a small specialized agents, whether something like this, like an orchestrator, or simply that some agents work in a schedule. So they get triggered at different steps in the system, depending on the system that you have, of course. And each one is responsible for very simple task. I also noticed like the syncing tool, to be honest, I know some people said, oh, this is providing tremendous power, which sometimes I notice, yes, it does, but also not always. Sometimes not having the syncing tool. So an AI agent that doesn't think and just like classify, let's say you need to give a label or a category for an input. Sometimes it's even better not to use this thinking tool and just like classify or use the categories on certain things. So I would really recommend you to chunk the tasks into the smaller different pieces and then assign an agent for the different pieces and build a system that works all together seamlessly, whether they are connected like that or whether they get triggered in the different flow of the system. And in my experience, you really only need multi-tool system, like multi-tool agent system, if you have some sort of a chat. So you're chatting with an agent and you need this agent to do another task. I'll give you an example. I had a chatbot on my website that you talk to an orchestrator agent and at some point you want to estimate a project, and that was forwarded to another agent that is connected to my database and previous projects that I had. And that one did the estimation for the project. And that's it. It only received like a summary of the project and it gave an estimate and it forwarded the answer back to the orchestrator, and the orchestrator talked to the human. So this is like the maybe reasons I see you need to add such a complexity, because here at some point, if you're interacting a lot with the orchestrator, we have the same issue as I mentioned earlier here with the context rot. So I would only recommend recommend it once you really need to have like live answers. Otherwise, I would recommend you to build stuff sequentially, so in steps. So feel free to use the scheduling triggers or something gets scheduled, maybe one after the other that does like the different tasks. So that was it. These are my 6 tips for building more reliable AI agents. As you know, this field is very experimental and some people are trying to build best practices and things that trying to drive this industry more forward. It's just a little bit more difficult because everybody's experimenting at the same time and everybody trying to see what works for them, what tool set to use, how to build more reliable systems. We really need to use like the best practices from software development and try to adjust it to the AI system as well. And with that, I hope we can build a very reliable systems for our clients and our own businesses. With that being said, I would love to know about your experience. So make sure to write in the comments maybe one of the most helpful tips that you've had to build more reliable AI systems. See you in the comments. Take care.